Hello, everyone. My name is Glenn, and I'm the Assistant Director of Recruitment here for the GEM, or Global Energy Management Program. And I want to thank you so much for joining us here today. And we're going to go ahead and begin the presentation right now, as I see a couple more people are trickling in. And I want to thank you, too, for coming here. I believe, as I mentioned, I'm the Assistant Director of Recruitment for the GEM program, and I'm very excited to go ahead and have the opportunity to speak with you today, and thank you for coming. And really the purpose of this webinar is to go ahead and discuss the GEM program in further detail, along with what helps separate it from some other graduate degrees. To go ahead and help with this, we have Parker Cohn, who I'll introduce here shortly, a recent graduate of the program, who will go ahead and really give the student or insider perspective that I think a lot of you will find helpful. And today, in addition to that, I'll go into further detail about many benefits of the GEM program, a lot of frequently asked questions, and a few other facts that should be helpful for those of you that are looking at this as a potential option for graduate school. And before we begin, I want to give a quick agenda here, as you can go ahead and see. And with that, we are going to go over a few program overview and facts, the GEM difference and curriculum, student support and onboarding, the application overview, and questions and answers as well at the very end. Also, with the audience here too, you may go ahead and see a little chat box here where you can write questions at the bottom of the screen, and there'll be a Q&A session at the end as well, or depending on the question, we may go over that throughout this. In addition, we're going to go ahead and have Parker answer some questions intermittently throughout the presentation today, so it will be appropriate to the topics that are here. And before that, I'd like to go ahead and do a quick introduction of Parker as well. We're going to try to get the audio here working a little bit too. So Parker this year, as you can see, is a is a recent graduate of the program, currently works at Excel Energy as well, and we're going to go ahead and have them say a few words here, so we can go ahead and talk a little bit about the program and go from there. So Parker, if you want to go ahead, Parker, if you want to go ahead and say a few words here, and we can go from there.
Sure thing. Thank you very much, Glenn. So like Glenn mentioned, I am an alum of the program, just graduated back in June of this year. Started in January, took the full speed accelerated route to obtain my degree, which I highly recommend to anyone to do that. It is kind of more of a time crunch, it takes a lot more time up front, but it's worth it 100% in my opinion. I've been able to, just about in every single class, there's something that I've been able to take back to my job at Excel, or just improve my overall understanding of every single piece. And that's always been an immense help, as well as just having, pardon, my video's a little off, but
yeah, well, thank you so much, Parker. And we'll try to get the video there going too. Not sure why. Oh, there we go. Perfect. So there he is. He does exist.
Yeah.
Wow.
Nice voice.
Yeah.
But yeah, between whether it's just the upper management's visibility of me, or just the overall skills and knowledge I've gained from this program, if I had the opportunity to go back, if I was said, oh, you want to do that again, or would you, decline this time around, I would do it again every single time. I'm also very much an energy nerd. I don't really work in oil and gas or engineering or anything, but every bit of this curriculum just really spoke to me in really meaningful ways. So I'm very thankful that this program is not only offered, but it offered to such a wide variety of people and so accessible to people. I even had people in my cohort living out of containers in Saudi Arabia on drilling sites, but they were still able to make it the time commitment, still make everything work out. So it's a really just, I'm a huge fan of this program, if you guys didn't know that, if you guys couldn't figure that one out.
Oh, yeah. All right, great. Well, thank you so much for that as well, Parker. And yeah, now here we'll go into a little more about the curriculum, about the program here as well. I'm sorry. Let's see. It's a quick thing here, Parker, to actually, I'm sorry to just in the middle of it. Can you go ahead and actually make me the host on the top right-hand side? is there's a little.
Mine's on the bottom right here.
Or actually, you know what? I actually just did it, so no worries there. So, anyways, yeah. Now back to back to the presentation itself here. So I want to go ahead and go back to the slides as we can see as far as the program. And thank you again, Parker, for sharing a little bit about yourself too. Yeah. So here as well, I want to go ahead and talk a little more about some of the program details and specifics. And as I mentioned as well, we'll have Parker answer some questions throughout as well. So first and foremost, the program here is 100% energy focused. And with that, we, as Parker's in the utility industry, we have a lot of students in oil and gas, renewables, some in policy, government, also some that are transitioning to the energy industry as well. I think the big picture-wise, though, is we span all the major energy industries and fields, so you really get a holistic understanding and perspective of how the program functions. And with the blended delivery, I think as you see there too, what I want to emphasize that it's really meant for working professionals. I know a lot of the students have kids, family, are busy, but you know, we have designed it where, are you going to be busy? Of course, but it is doable. And we'll talk about that in a little more detail here, but it's meant specifically for working professionals to balance around that schedule here with the flexibility, but also the in-class experience too. In terms of accreditation, the CU Denver Business School is AACSB accredited, which is a designation that only the top 5% of business schools in the world have. I know that's important to some students here. And then also we have a very strong partnership with the energy industry, where we have actually an advisory council here that we've had since the inception of the program of about 15 business and government professionals from all sides of the energy industry that meet a couple times a year to help make sure that we include the most current trends, the important topics that trickle down into our curriculum as well with that. So now going a couple other facts I want to point out here before our first question for Parker is that retention-wise, there's a lot of support here and flexibility too. And I think one thing that really stands out to me is that we have a retention rate here over 80%, which for a graduate hybrid program for working adults is pretty good. So that's something that is really, I think, impressive and speaks to the support that is available to our students, but also the students themselves. Basically, if you start the program, you know, the strong majority finish it. Also, in terms of the alumni, they're all across the country. Of course, we have a strong contingent in the Denver, Colorado area, but also Texas, California, New York, and everywhere in between. And even I know in our upcoming class, we have a student from the Philippines, another one who started here in October, that's in South Africa. So as Parker was saying before, I think with the student in Saudi Arabia or something, I believe that you really get a wide perspective, and the international one too, which can be helpful. And I think as you see here that we have our 20th cohort starting here in January, which we're very excited about. We are still working with students for that start date. I'll go over some details here in a little bit about that. All right, so now our first question for Parker that I have here is, I want to get into a little bit of the faculty for the program here because I think it's pretty unique and something that our students really appreciate. So Parker, can you go ahead and tell me what was most impressive to you about the GEM faculty and then kind of just the program overall?
Sure thing. So the GEM faculty, if I recall correctly, I believe maybe only one is a full-time professor. All our other faculties are, well, I guess one of them is also a full-time professor, two are full-time professors elsewhere as well. But these are, you know, men and women that are working within the industry right now. They have their finger right on the pulse of everything that's going on, current events with regards to energy. Like even when I was an undergrad, we had plenty of interesting professors who had worked in the, you know, respective industries related to my major. Though they had been a few years out, they'd gone, you know, full to the to teaching and, you know, teaching college level courses, and they'd come a little bit farther removed. So there were times where they'd tell us things about, you know, a certain country. I went to that same country and found that everything they said was wrong, which was kind of interesting. But then in the GEM program, you know, we started right as, you know, the Trump administration took hold. So a lot of our economic stuff was very right to the point and, you know, dealt with a lot of tariffs and how, you know, the whole economic system of, you know, a certain section or sector of the industry is going to operate as a result of that. Everything is just right up to the minute, 100%. I just loved that whole aspect of it. We talk about, it's something that would, in our discussion posts, which are every single week, we'd have, sometimes the discussion posts would change midweek because, something new happened that, we want to discuss because, as Glenn mentioned, we have people from all areas of the industry. We have renewables people, oil and gas people, plant operations, transmission and distribution, oil and gas utilities. So everyone coming from those different backgrounds. Everyone's able to give a lot more perspective to everything, as well as the professors. Some of them worked in regulatory environments. Some of them worked for utilities. Some of them were oil and gas people. Everyone just brought a very well-rounded piece of information with them. And not only that, it was all, again, like I said before, just so up to date, and all the information. I think the oldest information we saw that was presented to us might have been from 2013, where I don't know how everyone else's undergrad was. I saw a lot of the data I was given back then was far outdated beyond that. So everything was everyone is just a true professional in their field, and they're just passionate about teaching and handing down this information as well. So it was just a great experience and great support. I even had during one of my finance classes, I was really not getting the information down. And one of my professors literally went on to Zoom and set up a meeting with me at like 8 p.m. at night. They're that dedicated, which is something that I just have not seen before. And it's really special to me.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for that, Parker, too. And yeah, I think to highlight a couple things he mentioned there is that our instructors are not your cookie cutter faculty. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but the strong majority are working in the energy field currently and reflect the curriculum with that as well, but still make themselves available. And I've heard a lot of stories with that, or even having some students that work for Thanksgiving, or just making themselves available for the office hours because they really do care about it. So that's great. A couple other things I want to point out here too is that when you actually are here with the blended curriculum delivery, there's actually going to be 2 other cohorts that should be here simultaneously as well. So we'll talk about this a little more, but it's not just your cohort that you get to know, but for example, in January here for cohort 20, cohort 18 and 19 will be here as well. And we typically have a couple events to go ahead and have everyone get to know each other, understand, a little more about their backgrounds, help develop some of those relationships. And that's something I know that's really valuable too. One other thing I want to point out is with career advancement, we do have the Business Career Connection Center here that helps with resume building. They can meet with you as soon as the first cohort weekend here to go over any, as mentioned, resume tips, interviewing for different jobs, and you can meet with them throughout your entire tenure here and even afterwards as well. So there is a lot of support in those aspects too, to make sure that you will go ahead and get the resources you need to help you advance your career. And then here going into the next component that we have, I want to mention a little more about the blended curriculum. So how it works here with the program is that you will go ahead and begin each quarter term with a 4-day period, which is a Friday through Monday. That way also minimizes your time off work, so you can save your vacation days for vacation, which is always nice. So we go ahead and have those first 4 days in person, which are really critical because you, number one, will go ahead and get to meet your cohort. You will get to have some extensive hours of lecture and really get the foundation for that too. And we also have a couple other things like site tours, as you can see there, that we do twice a year. We have some social events or happy hours, like I know one coming up here for January. We have trivia night, which I personally just love. So even outside the context of the GEM program. So we have things like that, and even an executive in residence program that I'll get into a little bit here too, where you actually get insight and one-on-one time with a C-suite or executive level professional to learn more about the leadership side of the energy industry. With how it works here with the terms is that, and that how it works with the 18-month model. So you should finish in 18 months with the way it's set up, and you will have 2 classes that you will take, and they will be in January, April, July, and October. And of course, let's say if you begin in January here, then January and April the following year. But one thing I want to mention too is that it's not 18 months straight without any breaks. You actually get a couple weeks off between classes. I think it works out to about 2.5 to 3 months per calendar year of time off. So you can say, vacations, or if you just, little break. want to scheduling with your significant other, family, you do get some breathers and at least about 1 to 2 weeks between each term, and I think about a month over winter break as well. And we actually have all that built out over the next 2 years, so our students can prepare well ahead of time. And I think they appreciate that as well too, with that balance, right, that everyone's looking for. In terms of how it works after those 4 days, so after those 4 days, and I'll just use a January term coming up because it's an easier example, January 11th through 14th, you will be here on campus, and then starting on January 15th, that Tuesday, the next about nine and a half weeks or so will be in an online hybrid format that you'll have. And I'll get into that here in a little bit, but I just want to let students know that that will be more deadline driven, so you can go ahead and do that around your work schedule. But before that, though, we have another question here for Parker that I'm sure you'd want to know a little bit about. And Parker, I was hoping you can tell everyone, I guess, the advantage of the GEM cohort model and some of the support that you received from your classmates. I know you talked about that a little bit, but maybe just kind of expanding on that a little more.
Thank you very much, Glenn. Yeah, I'd love to speak to that. So one of my favorite parts of this program was, and still in many ways still is, the relationships made throughout the process. I still meet up with some classmates that work downtown in Denver on a monthly basis, always for lunch. Sometimes we also have happy hours too, and we can, when it all aligns with people's schedules. Additionally, like the presence alone of these other individuals in your cohort, as well as other cohorts throughout the program, was a major source of inspiration to keep me pushing and produce my best work, as this program surrounds you with individuals from all ends of the energy spectrum that are incredibly passionate and motivated to be the best version of themselves. And as a result, that all splashes back right onto you and makes you want to be your best, whether it's from a competitive side or you're just inspired by these other people. Now, being a utility guy, I sometimes felt like I was right in the middle of the group. We had some people that were strictly oil and gas. We had some others that were, actually absolutely obsessed with renewables. Being in a utility, specifically especially with Excel, that has a lot of both, gas as well as a huge renewable share of their generation fleet. It was just a cool way to kind of see both sides of the coin and have a very nice, I want to say, objective kind of point of view on things. But yeah, we had people from oil and gas, wind, solar, transmission and distribution, interconnections, grid management, and even some regulatory sectors as well within the energy industry represented in our cohort alone. Then when we get together for some of the special topics classes, the components of the energy industry are even better represented that way. And there's also great sources of information available, and everyone's always eager to help each other out. Like, I learned a lot about the oil and gas industry specifically from some of my fellow students that worked in it. They know it like the back of their hand, but for me, it was a completely new realm of the industry for me, and very fascinating. Even though I speak to myself being more of a renewable focused person, it gave me an immense appreciation for even the opposite end of the energy spectrum, so to speak.
Yeah, thank you for that, Parker. And that actually even reminds me of a quote from our accounting professor, John Burkholder, who actually works at Excel. He actually just retired, I believe, last month, but was a principal rate analyst there. And I know something he likes to say to students here who, let's say, have been in oil and gas for 15 years or are not planning to transition from one energy side to another, is that no matter what sector that you're in, eventually you're going to go ahead and deal with me. So it's important to know how everything works together, even if you are just in one specific sector like renewables, utility, oil and gas. And I think that's something that Parker just really resonated here in terms of the different classmates and the overall curriculum too. So thank you. In addition to that, as far as the flexibility component that I want to talk about, how that will work here is it will be deadline driven. So for example, you may have an assignment, and this is after that first 4-day period, an assignment where you will go ahead and have to do, let's say on Sunday evening at 9 p.m. But you can go ahead and do your work 24/7, whether that's morning, afternoon, evening, weekend, as long as it's done by the deadline there. And that's with the different case studies, projects you have. There are, of course, going to be like some group work that we would go ahead and do, and people can schedule time to meet with that. But other than that, though, it's pretty much deadline driven with that. So you really have the flexibility there afterwards. And one other thing I want to kind of point out too, before going to a little more about the specific curriculum here, is that as Parker said, the faculty is very accessible. They have office hours here, but also I want to highlight just a quick story about why those first 4 days are so important here. So actually during those first 4 days, you roughly get about half of your lecture hours during that period. So you really get a strong foundation of the class, not just meeting your cohort, which I think makes the online portion a lot more, not just like flexible, but interactive and collaborative, but also can even adjust curriculum on the fly. So I was actually in the renewable energy management class that we have here that teaches about leadership and management with that. And Jamie, the instructor, actually did a quick survey where he was asking the students, how many here have gone ahead and taken the energy law and contracts class? And only 2 people raised their hand out of 17, I believe. And which you thought would actually be opposite, where 15 would actually raise their hand. So he's like, okay, well now kind of knowing this, let's go ahead and try to adjust the curriculum in week 7 and 8 to highlight some more aspects of this so you have that foundation too. So there's just little things like that you can do organically that I think highlight the importance of being here for those first 4 days, on top of getting to know your instructors very well. We've even had, I know I was at an event recently where Dr. Jack Mason, who teaches our energy asset management and a couple other classes here, was actually talking to one of our alumni about switching a little bit on his career path. And Jack's like, yeah, I'm actually, moving here shortly, but like next month, go ahead, shoot me an email. I'd love to grab a cup of coffee, with you and go ahead and talk about that. So those relationships don't just stop, whether it's the faculty or students in the program, they continue well afterwards too, which I think speaks to the degree itself and the connection students make. So I have another question here for Parker. So Parker, in terms of courses here, I guess can you elaborate, was there a course in particular or a couple that really stood out the most to you?
Yeah, I'd love to speak about those. I didn't necessarily appreciate them at the time, but the value I got from our economics, finance, and accounting class was amazing. I still use everything that I learned in those classes today, hold on to my textbooks as well, just in case I ever need some quick reference. But one thing I found fascinating is with finance, you could apply everything you learned to just about everything in life, even though it was an energy finance focused class. We looked at some very large, like huge capital intensive projects and, evaluated them to see if X amount of years down the line, if it's still a sensible deal, if you still want to do that, where we take into account just about every aspect you need. So I felt amazing with that. Our economics class, I was never good with economics in undergrad, but our professor Janie was great about making sure that everyone got the extra help. She was always available, had weekly office hours, and just gave it a very simple, I want to say not the doctor has bedside manner. Janie and even John Burkholder, our accounting professor, and Mike Orlando, our finance professor, they are amazing. They really help. They really care about your understanding and how everything blends in with you. And so they will take the extra time into that now. And so those were some of my most valuable classes. As you mentioned earlier, Jack Mason with his asset management and production class was another one of the most fascinating and cool classes I've ever taken, where we have one of our final projects was looking at the current generation mix of a given utility that was planning on shutting down some of its coal assets. And so we had to run it through taking aspects from economics, from finance, from our tech aspects of energy science class, blended it all together to give us this foundation of understanding that helped us better evaluate what kind of path that utility should take in order to maximize their profits, keep customer bills low, and decarbonize their generation fleet all at once. That was just one example. Other people looked at an oil field and looked at individual wells as assets. That class was it was very difficult, I'll give it that, but every second of it was worth it. I cannot speak about how great of a professor Professor Mason was and still is. Additionally, another class that was actually part of the core curriculum that initially got me kind of leaning more towards The GEM program, as opposed to a traditional MBA, was the technical aspects of energy science class, where we go through all the thermodynamic calculations of how energy is produced and converted, which sounds crazy. I come from a business administration background, so talking about some of this engineering side of things and complex formulas at first had my eyes rolling, but Professor Hussein was great about explaining how everything works, and I thought his teaching method it really vibed with me in the sense that I have no background in that stuff, but it all made sense. I was able to reduce the calcs, get the answers I needed to, understand why I was getting things wrong when those things stuck out. But then again, one more class that I guess I should have, plenty more than just one class that stuck out to me, but the travel courses for special topics, which is both London and Washington, D.C. Those classes, I would love to go take another one of those classes if I could, and even do all the work involved just for it. Because we were, meeting with some executives from major companies within the industry, some in London, some in Washington, D.C., hearing about it. It was right around the time of Brexit as well, so we got to hear their perspectives on that and how those kind of factors influence the greater energy industry, and hear about what these companies, let's say we saw a major utility in the UK, what their kind of wants, needs, and desires are for the next 5 years, what things they are worried about, what concerns they have, what trends they see going on in the industry. That was just absolutely fascinating. The same thing, even the oil and gas companies, which coming from somewhere far removed from oil and gas, blew my mind, because we got to see American Petroleum Institute out in Washington, D.C. this past March, and that blew my mind of it was basically oil and gas 101, but a very objective way of presenting all the information, which was incredibly impressive. But yeah, with every single class having these industry experts teaching them, you have the most up-to-date finger on the pulse information, as well as, and even Professor Hussein comes from an oil and gas background. He explained how a lot of renewables work. We got to look at, try to figure out how, if we place X number of wind turbines facing one specific direction, how much energy you can produce in a day, a month, a year, based on regional capacity factors, the technical specifications of this equipment and stuff like that. All those classes are just amazing.
Well, thank you so much, Parker. I think, those are a few great examples there. A couple things I want to highlight too is that one is, as Parker mentioned, he had more of a business background. There is no specific requirement for having an engineering background or anything like that for our program. Our students, we have a lot that come from business, some from engineering, liberal arts, they're all over, but I think that's one of the reasons that those first 4 days are so important too in person, as Parker just mentioned, is that having that in-classroom instruction to really go ahead and make sure the foundation for a class that might be a little more intensive or quantitative based is especially helpful, for that too. And there was actually a question by one of the audience members here about Parker and his work experience at Excel, and I believe we're actually going to get into that in a little bit here, so just hang tight. There's a question that kind of relates to that. One other thing I want to mention is that with the way the classes are set up here, you have 12 total. There's 9 core classes and 3 electives, and one of those electives being the travel course that Parker talked about, and that's actually with Chris Hansen, who is a Colorado state legislator here, so he knows a lot about government. And really with it too as well, it is very an applied theory approach. So it's not just current in terms of what you're learning about, but it's a lot of actual case studies, examples from our instructors, workplaces like that past week or years, to really go ahead and help highlight how you can actually apply it in a realistic scenario to your current position or future one. I just wanted to mention too. Here as well, I'm kind of going to our next slide here. I want to talk about the GEM competency model as well with that too. Before I do though, I know you talked a little bit about this, Parker, as far as I believe the energy tech science class as one of the reasons why you decided to do something like this versus more of an MBA program. But I think a way you can almost think of this program, it's almost more like an energy-focused MBA with also a lot of leadership components too. On that note, Parker, I guess, what advice would you give to someone, or like some students who are looking at GEM versus an MBA program, assuming that they want to go ahead and stay or transition at least to the energy industry?
So if anyone's looking, trying to decide between a GEM degree versus the MBA, I think the first question you want to ask yourself is, where do you want to be 5 years down the road? Do you want to still be in the energy industry? Do you want to, have some flexibility to, branch out of the energy industry? It really all depends on you. The GEM degree is great, however, very niche in the sense of how, some employers might see it. So I've had some difficulty looking at jobs that they'd have a drop-down list for the major of your master's. And so I ended up choosing something a little bit different, like whether it's global management or business management or something along those lines, which isn't a really big deal at all. And one thing I want to also point out is I always describe the GEM degree as an energy dipped MBA. While everything is energy focused, the core concepts of a lot of our core curriculum are all very much the same as you're going to go through in a typical MBA program. One caveat I'd say to that, I doubt you're going to see an energy sciences course in one of those in an MBA group. And, certain things like marketing is an elective in GEM, where I believe it's a core component of most MBA programs. Let's see, where's another little point to make here on this one. It's really just all up to you. When people ask for, a job post might ask for, MBA or master's preferred, while you may have to take some time and, have some expound on the GEM degree, it's still, a Master of Science, and it's still very much in line with a lot of the MBA courses. One caveat of that, which is kind of I guess I'd say an extra little cherry on this sundae as far as core curriculum goes, is within our accounting class. We also took some time to go into the oil and gas accounting side, because a lot of it's managerial accounting. However, then we also go into how different industries might have different industries within energy might differ, because oil and gas has two different types of accounting associated with how projects are costed, developed, and implemented. So I thought that was absolutely fascinating. But if you are absolutely fully invested in energy, I would 100% go for the GEM over the MBA. If you're on the fence, take some time to consider both of them. One thing that really helped me out was on this website called Coursera. There's actually a fundamentals of the global energy business or industry. I can't recall the exact name of the course, but it's taught by Michael Orlando, who's also our finance professor. And if you're on the fence between MBA and GEM, I'd highly recommend pursuing that, because it'll kind of it offers you an opportunity to sort of dip your foot in the water before taking a full dive into a given master's program.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And actually, if you are interested in that, feel free to shoot me an email afterwards and I can send you the link. It's a free course through Coursera. We offer a couple of them, but yeah, it's an overview of all the energy industry taught by Dr. Orlando that we offer just free here. And I think, as Parker pointed out too as well, it depends on your career path. So if you think you may want to go into finance, or you're unsure exactly what you want to do, then of course having a more broad degree makes sense. But if you really want to stay or be in the energy field, then I think that's where something like this, helps set a lot of students apart with that. So thank you, Parker, for talking about that. And actually, another question too, in terms of the schedule here, I'd love to get a little bit of your take on it, because I know you're a relatively recent graduate, Parker. Because we do design the program for working adults, but of course you'll still be busy, with coursework, curriculum. Can you discuss a little bit about how you were able to complete the GEM program while you were working full-time at Excel, and talk a little bit about how the online flexibility helped out with that?
Absolutely. So pursuing the GEM program full-time was possible due to that flexible work schedule. Only have to take off about 2 days, so like the Friday and the Monday, within the first week for cohort weekend. Was very easily manageable. And even though the majority of the quarter is still online, you'll still have plenty of support from your professors as well as your fellow classmates. and GEM administration as well. Even during the weeks, we'd reserve a room up here at the GEM suite, and a couple classmates and I would all come together and work on different problems for classes together, help discuss project ideas, even if we weren't in the same group projects. And then, with the overall online component, a lot of people say, oh, I don't know if I can really manage an online class because if I'm not in class, I kind of get too far removed from it and find that to be a huge problem. But the Canvas system that we use for managing all of our coursework and administrating exams and stuff like that, that was amazing. You could also sync it with your personal calendar. So I just open up my phone, swap over to my calendar, and I can see when every assignment was due, as well as other reminders to get moving on certain assignments as well. Is a lot more manageable than I thought it was going to be. I expected to be constantly stressed out over the workload and the time commitment to it. And I'm not saying there's no feeling of crunch or pressure, as time quickly became my most important and sought after commodity in my existence during that time. But it's all doable, it's all manageable. We had some guys who, working on drilling operations, they had to work, nights, or they're working mornings, and they just had to find ways to, squish time in for it. They were able to do it. I was able to do it. And I also, admittedly, was not the best student in undergrad, but definitely GEM helped push myself to become that better version of myself, as well as, having these schedules and having these deadline-driven kind of, deadline-driven schedules. That help keeps everything organized and helps keep pushing you forward. It's hard to lose momentum in this program. So with that, but with doing that while working full time, you really want to take advantage of the time in between classes, where we have about 1 or 2 weeks in between quarters. Those were a crucial part of getting through the program. It was during those periods where I was able to catch up on other things I put aside for GEM, whether it was seeing friends, going on a hiking trip, or going into the mountains, or even just laying low and recharging the old mental batteries. That helped made everything so much easier, because the 10 weeks of the quarter is very much, in many ways, a sprint. But then those breaks they're the perfect amount of time between breaks, so you don't quite get off that kind of rushed feeling, but you can relax without falling too far out of line with it. So I thought that was immensely a huge advantage to this program as well. Like, I'm not married, don't have kids, I just have a dog. But we had people, with 2, 3 kids, whole families to work with, as well as full-time jobs. And they all managed it. Some of them managed with the full 2 classes or the 18-month pathway as well, and did so with great success.
Yeah, thank you for that, Parker. And yeah, I think as I mentioned earlier as well, you do have little breaks between each term, and a little bit of a longer one over winter as well. But yeah, it is manageable, and there's resources there to go ahead and make it flexible around your schedule. And no, thank you for that too. So one thing here quickly I want to mention is one of the other things we do in person here is an executive in residence program. Actually, as an example, our previous one we had is the CEO of Belize Natural Energy, Susan Morris, which is the largest natural gas producing company in the country of Belize. Our current one that we're going to have in January here is Yoon Lee, who's the director of U.S. Solar at Panasonic. And essentially, this will be your chance to get more of the executive level mindset and experience. So there's one-on-one sessions you can sign up for with them during those 4 days here. They do a couple small group lunches, some project consults, usually maybe a lecture or two. So what's great about it as well is you'll actually have access during your time here to probably about anywhere from like 4 to 6. And they come from, we have the former CFO of Excel Energy, Teresa Madden. I just mentioned Yoon Lee at Panasonic. And really spanning across all different industries that I think our students find really helpful too, that we have. So a little thing here on career advancement as well. I've another question here for Parker, and it actually relates to, I believe, a question from our audience about his time at Excel. But before that, something I want to point out is actually gathering some data here. Actually, over half our students, by the time they graduate, actually have received a promotion, and a third of them have received a salary increase of 10% or higher as well with that too. So as far as that return on investment, that was exciting to see, and here are a few examples of that that you can see here. But going into that as well, I know, Parker, you mentioned, or we talked a little bit before, actually, the webinar on how you received a promotion about a month or so into the GEM program, and even though that was something that was already kind of lined up before you began here, but you mentioned how it was really helpful in terms of some of the more advanced projects you're able to do at work versus your peers and opportunities in your new role. So I was hoping you can talk a little more about that, about how the GEM program helped with that transition to your new role and some opportunities there.
Thank you, Glenn. Yes, so as Glenn mentioned, I received a promotion from a marketing assistant into an associate product portfolio manager at Xcel Energy about a month into me starting the GEM program. And so while the promotion was not necessarily a direct result of starting GEM, I had to produce a bio to send out to our organization about, oh, this person just was made this new role or organizational announcement. And then when our VP saw that, he ended up coming down to talk to me personally when he came out to visit from Minneapolis, just to talk about the program, what he thinks about it, what he's seen from other GEM alums that are within our actual organization, because Excel represents quite a few GEM alumni. I see them on a regular basis. But then he actually called me out during the meeting to talk about pursuing this program and how he's really just excited about seeing other people to kind of go out on their own to really take full advantage of all the resources available, as well as the tuition reimbursement that Excel offers for people pursuing all sorts of programs, this one included. Now, in addition to getting greater visibility from my upper management, that ended up moving also into giving me opportunities to take on other side projects or special projects as well. One of them was a 6-month project where I had to get flown between Denver and Minneapolis every other week to help the company redevelop the product development process, or a thing that we called the product development process improvement, where I got to work on, we pretty much dismantled our entire process and then put it back together using different aspects and influences from the Agile and Scrum software development methods, and also implemented a new type of software for project tracking that's used across our entire organization. And I don't believe I would have been called on for that type of assignment or responsibility had it not been made clear throughout my organization that I was going to pursue this kind of degree, completely energy focused, though even within my own organization, they're well aware that there's a lot of overall business administration benefits of taking this degree. So that was a very cool kind of, not necessarily a promotion, but a very cool way in which GEM had opened up doors for me very early on into the process. I think I started that project about 6 months into the GEM program. So I'd taken 2 quarters and then was called on to join this project, where I think I was the youngest person by about 10 years within that group as well. So that was
no pressure, right?
Yeah, exactly.
With that, no, great. Well, thank you so much, Parker. And yeah, and I think that's a great thing to hear as well too, is that how the real world kind of curriculum really applies to that as well. And with this too, I want to show just some examples, and there's many more, as we have over 400 students and alumni from the program, but they represent these fields and even more. We have a lot of government organizations, others too, but we've even had some students that have gone from finance to oil and gas or renewables to utilities. So I think it definitely, the curriculum and the connections help with that as well. I did have a question here for Parker talking about the GEM alumni and his relationships with the program. I think he kind of already talked about that. We're running a little short on time, so I'll bypass that now. But one thing I did want to mention is that for our students here, we actually have developed specifically a website for our alumni of the program to kind of help with job opportunities and help them stay in touch, where it's almost like a hybrid of like LinkedIn and Indeed.com, where you can go ahead and search alumni in different industries, by, different areas. And we have job first opportunities there too that are made to our students there before they're made public. I saw one recently in Excel, another one at Res America. So there's ways like that too to really go ahead and help have more warmer connections with that we do, in addition to different alumni events. I know I saw Parker here a couple weeks ago at a speaker series that we have, and we were talking a little bit, and he still stays in touch with a few students here. So just a couple additional things too I wanted to mention, not just during the program, but afterwards, that we have available here for students, and that I think they find particularly helpful. So going into the next thing here, I want to talk a little bit about kind of the GEM support and kind of the life cycle of how the program works here. Before I do that though, I know Parker talked about this a little bit, but in terms of the time commitment here too, I was curious, Parker, if you had just any other kind of advice as well in terms of, for those who are interested in the GEM program, but just concerned about balancing their schedule, afraid of, how they'll fit that in. Are there, I guess, any words of wisdom, so to speak, that you would have for anyone who has that as a particular heartburn?
Yeah, I would say start your assignments. Start looking at assignments the day they become available. So within our finance class, as well as our economics class, two classes that I found incredibly difficult and challenging, generally the assignment for the week, whether it was practice questions or a practice, take-home quiz online based on, that week's curriculum, you want to jump into it first, start working out every problem you can. And then typically it'd be about maybe like Wednesdays or Thursdays where we'd have because every assignment is generally due on a Sunday night for the most part. And so when we'd have those types of situations, you don't want to wait to the last minute. And these are going to be challenging projects and assignments. So always start early, start writing down questions, and be sure to join every single, as many at least as possible, all office hours as well, because chances are if you're struggling with the same thing, there's at least 20% of your class as well, at the very minimum, is having the same problem, if not more problems than you are. So everyone's in it together. Also, never hesitate to reach out to your classmates, especially because everyone's has that short time commitment or has a time crunch. And everyone can support, everyone's there to support each other as well. It's a very nurturing environment as far as support from your classmates, the GEM administration, as well as your professors. So take advantage of all those things available to you.
Yeah, and actually one thing I want to point out too that I've heard from many of our alumni and current students is that because probably the majority of our students are in the energy field already, and there's some that are transitioning to it, but we have a very well-rounded classroom, as Parker was talking about as well. So there might be one class where someone has more of a finance background that they can help you with, and another one where maybe there's something more on like the marketing side or human capital management that you can assist them with. So it is, I think, definitely a nurturing environment is a good way to put that way, where you can kind of pick each other up. And the diversity of the cohort, I think, helps out with that a lot too. So in addition to that, though, I want to mention, how does the support here work? So I know, as I talked about before, we have a very strong retention rate, and it doesn't happen by accident. We really try to make sure that the program's not just a good fit for students, but it's a good for your goals, the time frame with everything. So we actually have Michelle Motley, who's wonderful. She's our student affairs manager, and it's been the program for over 6 or 7 years, actually. And once a student's accepted here, she'll help you from then all the way until you graduate, even a little bit afterwards, in terms of logistics, your class schedule. We have a lot of students who meet with her during the semester, or if you want to talk to her on the phone or Skype, she is very available. So it's not just like you're accepted, okay, then have fun, good luck. There's a lot of guidance and support with that as well. So just wanted to highlight that here too. And because we've been doing this for about 10 years, it's not our first rodeo. So it's a pretty well-oiled machine, I like to think, in that regard. In terms of tuition and finance, some of you may already know this, but a couple things I want to highlight here. Number one, the tuition's the same whether you're in-state or out-of-state. And for the 36 credits of the program, it's $54,500 for the degree. And there's a few different ways to pay for that as well, and it's not due all up front. Many of our students do financial aid. I include a quick link there. Some of you may already know that, to go ahead and pay for the program. There's others who do like monthly payment plans or things by term, or I know there's some that receive tuition reimbursement as well. I think, as an example, Excel Energy, I think, has partial with that. Right, Parker? Yeah, as many companies do. have partial of that as well. So when there's a will, there's a way, so to speak, with that. So we know it is a significant investment, just like anything in education is, but there's a few different options to make sure that it's feasible and something that you're comfortable with. So I wanted to mention that. And then also here too, in terms of application requirements, so the thing about this is that it's completely different than your undergraduate degree. So I know a quick story from mine from Wisconsin-Madison, way back when I applied there, you fill out your application, a few things online, although at that time was mostly on paper, and then you send it out, pray 4 months later for a big envelope versus a tiny letter, right? And how much fun that was. This, completely different. I actually would go ahead and assist all students that apply to the program here. And really, there's no reason why it shouldn't take about, a couple weeks or so to finish everything. I've had some students finish as quickly as a few days. So here we highlight a couple of the requirements here with it. But the nice thing is that you don't have to do everything at once. And we have an online application portal that's almost like the online classroom that Parker was talking about, where you can log in or log out anytime and save the progress of your work. So if you want to work partially on your essays and save it there or something else, you can do that and then get back to it in a couple days. So the nice thing is you can do it chunk by chunk. One other thing I wanted to mention too is that for transcripts, a lot of schools do e-transcripts now, and we get those within a day or so. So I receive those weekly from students here, and it's just a way to kind of help things be a little quicker as well. One other thing too, just a couple of quick tips here. For your resume, you definitely want to focus on your experience, whether it's in energy, leadership, management, with that. The essay questions, the nice thing is there's 4 questions, but they're each about 200 words. So it's like 1 to 2 paragraphs, nothing too crazy. And it's something that I mentioned that I would help students with in terms of feedback, assisting with that process. And for recommendation letters too, one of the things that's nice in our online application system is you just have to enter your recommender's information, and then our application portal will generate email that will automatically be sent to them with directions and a link, and they just go ahead and complete that. And once they do, the students will get an automatic email update that it's done. So you just want to let your recommenders know to kind of maybe speak on your work experience, ask, for examples of, teamwork for projects, and of course, let them know to expect it as well. But it's very different than your undergraduate application process, much more guided, organized, and as I mentioned, usually a lot quicker. And we get decisions back pretty quickly too, especially this time of year as well, a couple months before classes start. We usually get a turnaround about a week or so. So for example, as I mentioned, I think in this slide here, to go ahead and start the application process, there's a link for the online application. Or if you are having trouble finding that, you can of course email me, but you just go ahead and do that to start the application process. And as I mentioned, looking up your transcripts, just if you went to, let's say, I don't know, University of Minnesota, University of Minnesota transcript request, and you should get a link for how to do that. And really the rest of the process outside of this, with just like the essay, updating your resume, really doesn't take too long. So we're actually going to be working with students as an example for our January 11th class here until about December 21st here. So, which is more than enough time for those that are still interested or considering that start date. And something where, as I mentioned, it usually takes about a couple weeks or so to get your files in. And then we get a pretty quick turnaround here too with the admissions committee. So a couple quick last things. One thing I want to mention is that for those that have not applied yet, if you are still interested in applying for the upcoming January class, we are waiving the application fee here for up until November 25th. And our application deadline there is December 21st, as you can all see there too. And if you have any questions on that, or even about our other cohorts we have here, as I mentioned, my name is Glenn. I'm the Assistant Director of Recruitment here, so I handle all those aspects, the application process, admissions, anything else. And yeah, I hope everyone found this to be a very helpful perspective of the program. I want to have a special thank you to Parker as well too for discussing the student experience. Thank you, Parker. You're awesome of that as well. And yeah, and one other just maybe quick thing here I want to mention too is that for students that are interested in connecting with alumni or something else with that, reach out to me. Generally, our alumni are very gracious with their time and are happy to discuss the student experience as well too. I know I have several people at Excel Energy that have done that, and yeah, they're happy to share their experience. But just connect with me first, and I'll let you know that's something that would be feasible. And it looks like we're just about out of time here, so no real Q&A. But I want to thank everyone again for coming. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week and weekend. And As I mentioned, please reach out to me via email or phone with any questions, and I hope everyone has a wonderful day. Take care.